So in the 20 minutes we've got left, what I want to do is to take you into one of the issues that's happening very much for us during the daytime chaplaincy, but also occasionally at night, and that is homelessness, communicating with the homeless. There are certain reasons why people are homeless, and I think it's hugely important that as you go out on the streets, you get a sense for the fact that every person out there has got a different story. And so when we talk about homeless people, you can't sort of put a category, you can't build a picture in your mind of any one particular type of person. Just appreciate that there are people out there who are abused, physically have problems or sexually have problems. They've been through a family breakdown. I mean, the classic case is you'll find a man on the streets who only that night has had to walk out of his home. Maybe he's running away from his own domestic violence or whatever. You've got other people in there who've been out there for years and who are long-term. We've got other people who are drug and alcohol addicted. There's a lot of mental illness out there, and so many of them are unemployed, not all of them. Relating to them is hugely important. You know, we've found over recent years that one of the best ways of getting into the private space of a homeless person is to do it extremely cautiously, extremely gradually. They are usually people who've been abused, and so they are super sensitive, and they don't really want you, a stranger, into their private space. And so they're keeping you well out there, and you need to earn their trust to get into that private space. There are some people we have failed to get into their private space. That happened to Gabby and her team last Friday. Just impossible to do it. She's a long-term person out there. She's been abused so much, she's not going to let us get anywhere near her. So treat them with the utmost respect. Perth CBD has the largest concentration of homeless. Something like 77% of those in the entire metro area are focused in that CBD area, which is interesting. About 420 are what we call rough sleepers between Joondalup and Kwinana or Rockingham. Okay, there's about 420 that we know of and that was at a particular census that was done earlier this year. It's only done every 3 years. It was done earlier this year. The average age is about 40. The youngest was 16, and the oldest we found was 74. And 70% of them are Indigenous people, and 70% of them 70% of them are considered vulnerable. Does that give you a bit of a picture? Communicating with them. You know, during the day, I'm talking about 9 to 5, there are extensive services by good groups such as Tranby, which is Uniting Care West, Rua, which is Catholic, St Bart's, which is Anglican. They're doing fantastic stuff. There's another group that Anglicare runs called Street Connect, and Esben is in charge of them. He's a good mate of many of us, and he targets the 16 to 25s, and he gets a yearly grant from the government to do it. And they have a street van which tends to move around the city a bit, and they really focus on the younger adults. Accommodation is very hard or impossible to achieve after about 2 o'clock on any day in Perth. Okay, so by the time you're out on the streets, you know, don't expect that you're going to find accommodation for that person who really is looking for it. If they haven't done it by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they're not likely to get it. Our daytime chaplains find that many opportunities to relate to the homeless. In other words, we find that the daytime ministry focuses very much on homelessness, whereas the nighttime it's more about alcohol and conflict. So it's a very different sort of regime between those two, which has been fascinating for us. We have an MOU with a crowd called Essentials for Women. On the first night that the first daytime roster, Christy discovered that hygiene was a big issue for homeless women, and so she got on the web and found there was this national women's group called Essentials for Women, and they were and there's a chapter of them in Perth, and they give money and the organisation puts hygiene packs together. And so we have this memorandum of understanding with this group, and they've currently given us about a dozen packs, and we've been slowly giving them out to women who will take them on the streets during the daytime, and they're there, of course, to use at night time as well. Okay? So that's the sort of stuff that's going on. And it's really lovely to see.
So we've got a question. When you say accommodation is impossible after 2 p.m.,
Yep.
that means that the homeless person has to be in the facility by 2 p.m., or does it mean that if they haven't got a booking or reserved a bed or something by 2 p.m. they won't get it?
That's right. The latter. Yep.
The latter.
Yep.
Okay, so they could still be on the street at 6 p.m. But
They could, depending.
They have a room that they've.
Yes, depending on the facility. Like if they're into Lentara, which is the Salvo Refuge for men, which is down Aberdeen Street, just down near Stirling Street, they may get a bed there. Okay, so if they've done that by 2 o'clock, then they may go out until 11 o'clock at night or 12 o'clock, but they know that that bed's theirs. But there are other places that they may not be so fortunate in having that.
Do the shelters often do they have curfews? Consider you have to be in by a certain time?
I don't know that. I don't know how to answer that question. I don't know. I know that some of them have very strict rules, like the Salvos run a thing called Bridge House, and that is for allowing drunk people to virtually get through their drunkenness, almost a detox sort of a place. And they will take people up till 1 o'clock in the morning, or if the police ring them up, they'll take them till 2. But and so if we find someone who's really in that state and we talk to the police about it, the police will ring through to Bridge House for us, and in fact even take the person there, because it's not that very far out of Northbridge. But if that person has misbehaved in Bridge House within the last 5 years, they're on the no-no list, and they just won't take them. And you can understand that, because the Bridge House can't afford security. So they're not going to take somebody that is going to offend their staff. So all those sorts of political issues are going on all the time as well. Makes it very difficult. St Bart's had a beautiful attitude for a number of months earlier this year, but the drug dealers got in there and started abusing it. And so they've had to call in the police and shut out all sorts of men that should be in there getting a bed of a night time. But they can't afford to have them in there, because once they come in there, they bring the drugs, and it creates pandemonium and conflict and anger, and it just turns the whole place upside down. They haven't got the staff to cope with it, so they've just got to throw them out. So you get all these terrible things going on at any time. Earlier this year, the directors of the City of Perth sit just under the councillors, so they're the people who sort of run the city. They came up with a plan to have, with the agreement of the police, what they call a hard stand in the city, which would be a bit of ground in which they would have toilets and showers, ablutions in other words, and some food and a bit of shelter. A great idea, so that all these rough sleepers late at night could come in and find a spot. A lot of people did a lot of work on it, and the directors had a look at it and said, no, this is too hard, we're going to drop it. Now that sort of thing's been going on for about 30 years, because the tension within the council is that we don't want our city to be seen to have a bad spot where all these people are hanging around. That's going to be a ghetto. So they resist it. So you get this sort of tension within the council between how you are compassionate and how you keep a city looking good for tourists. And inside that, there's a lot of politics. The latest is, in fact, only in the last week, I've heard that the city had a visit from the Premier, the City Council, and he's pursuing this hard stand idea. So it may be a couple of years off, but it looks like it's starting to get traction. But look, at any one time, there's heaps of stuff going on for the homeless. And some of our street chaplains have had some great ideas and have done some good stuff. But you need to be part of that wider conversation. Don't take off and do anything of your own. Find out where the conversations are happening and be part of it. Because it's better for us to be working with one another than trying to do our own little thing. At the moment, I know that there's a group of Christians in Perth who are very keen to have a one-off shop where the homeless can get anything they wanted. Well, as it happens, the City of Perth do that, and they're about to do it again in November. So they need to work together on this. Anyway, I could tell you story after story about it. It's a huge issue. We are a first point of contact ministry. You know, if that drills down into your understanding, you know what you're going to do and what your limits are. Got the idea? You are a first point of contact caring group.
My daughter had clinical depression. She went to live on the streets for some weeks. And, goodbye cruel world, and off to join the circus, that sort of thing. She told me quite a lot of stuff. She said, Dad, unless you're on the day shift roster, you will not see us. Because we're gone. At night we're gone.
Yeah.
We're not wandering the streets at night. That's where the party goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you said where most of us go is there's a few warehouses right down towards the freeway.
Yeah.
That's where we all go. There's like
Yep.
a little twist in
Yeah. Yeah.
down there.
Sure.
There's no one in, but they just do a perfunctory glance.
Yeah.
That's where we're all there.
Yep.
And only when the sun comes up do we come out.
Yep.
But they're very gregarious and they've all got street names.
Yep.
It's very institutionalised too. Very institutionalised. You know? They look after each other. And
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? Yeah. I've got some of these comments here. We're a first point of contact service. Use the homeless services in the inner city brochure. That's this one I've given you tonight. Why don't you have a look at that? This is an absolutely amazing document. You know, the City of Perth have done a lot of work on that. Look at the stuff that's written out there. It's just huge. And this is in the backpack. This is in the backpack. So you know, you've got stuff on your hands to look after them. And there's lots of people out there doing stuff for the homeless. I was sitting with Gabby and who was the male? Trina, that's right. There were two females on last Friday. And I was telling them, because I'd been there talking to the people who own the FJM, which is the big hotel on the corner of Barrack and St George's. You know, going down St George's Terrace, you've got the Anglican Cathedral next to there. You with me? You know what I mean? Now, the Anglican Cathedral, this is just one little tiny part of the city. The Anglican Cathedral give out 30 packaged meals every day to homeless people. That's just one little part of the city. There are heaps of others giving out food as well. So it's a pretty big area. Now, we don't give out money unless it is an absolute crisis. There's only $100 in the back pocket, and it must last both Friday and Saturday nights, as well as Friday lunchtime, okay? So there's not much money to play around with. It's probably just once or twice you can get a girl into a taxi and get her home, if it's absolutely essential. I think Amy said tonight, better to ring up her mum and see if she'll come in and pick her up or something like that. And so that little line in blue there is one that I've used occasionally. I don't have money, but is there another way I can help you? And just, because particularly the Aboriginal people, we've had huge tensions between Noongar Outreach and the street chaplains over this whole issue of money. At one stage they were sending us Aboriginals because they knew that we were a soft touch. Then we set up an MOU with them that they would never do that, and then blow me down if some of our street chaplains started to do it again. So we have this terrible mess going on. At the moment it's all sorted out. Don't give money to Aboriginals, okay? I'm not saying that to put them down. They're wonderful people. They're good people. But they know how to work it. And we don't have that sort of money. We are not that sort of service. Okay? Focus on listening and caring. How you're going. Would you like to talk? Many will sleep during the... This is to answer what Craig just said. Many will sleep during the day, but be awake at night to protect themselves and their goods. Sleeping at night isn't safe. People get attacked, urinated on, spat on, and the rest. So that's why they disappear at night time. They're looking after themselves because it's one of those times when they're more vulnerable. Okay? Anyway, that's just a few things. Wow, I've pretty well done my dash on time. I really want to talk about chaplains and evangelism. I'll just introduce this and then I think we ought to shut down for the night. Quite clearly, you've got the message already that we are not there to preach. We are not taking anything religious onto the streets, okay? You're aware of that. We are there to care. But what happens is in hitting the heart, they go to the head. Because they go to the head, they start to ask you, why are you doing this? So you start getting all these evangelistic opportunities of how you're going to share your testimony and who you are as a Christian and all that. And we need to go into that with you, how to do that. So we'll push that over to next week and see how we go.